Troop of Echoes. The young man wakes between one breath and the next, and sits up. He yawns, stretches, sips from a glass of water on the bedside table. Gets up, draws the curtains. It is still dark outside, but the first light of dawn is beginning to spill across the sea far below his window. He barely remembers his dream, something about a party at the palace and applause. He washes the dream away as he performs his morning ablutions. Even at this early hour, his servant has ensured the water is warmed and there is a fresh towel waiting for him. He pauses for a moment, looking at himself in the gold-inlaid mirror. He practices his expressions for a few minutes, appearing somber, appearing amused, appearing angry. Then he dresses, beginning with the simple dragonbone mask that covers the upper part of his face, then a freshly laundered silk underrobe of glorious apricot. He fingers the material, luxuriating in both its texture and its color. He pulls on a somber black lambswool outer robe, but belts it only loosely. It gives him a sense of satisfaction that everyone will see how he rejects the funeral garb of the traditionalists, ready to embrace the joy of a nation reborn. In the foyer of his apartment, he pauses to pour fresh water and oil into the little basin at the shrine, and scatter black rose petals. Solica, hands folded before her, wearing the mask of peace. The other sorcerer kings stand behind her, united and solemn. If he feels any particular connection to his alleged ancestor, he does not display it in his perfunctory obeisance. The office is quiet. He is the first one there. He relaxes into his chair. The new leather creaks as he tries to settle himself. He is unaccustomed to it, but knows that in time it will come to fit his body like a glove, and if it does not, he will simply replace it. He takes a moment to ensure everything is arranged on his desk, positioned just so to convey busy professionalism and subtle power. His eyes stray again to the portraits of the Grand Illarks on the wall opposite the desk. Anyone who meets with him will do so under the watching gaze of Kytha. And the others, of course. The only document on his desk is a sealed letter. His secretaries have been chosen for their competence at dealing with the day-to-day demands of his office, so this is something that requires his personal attention. He turns it over in his hand, selects the jade-handled golden letter opener. It is from his opposite number in the Empire. It must have arrived during the night. He reads it carefully, writing a few lines on the vellum he keeps for his most important business with a pristine swan's feather quill. While he writes, a servant enters, soft woolen slippers making no noise on the dark carpet. They open the shutters on the window, which faces towards the dawn, to where the sun is rising. The servant refills his water glass from the pitcher, bows, and quietly retreats. The meeting with Grand Illark Kytha of Kaban, with the Grand Council, rather, has already been arranged, and he must be ready to present his summary of the missive. Must be ready to receive his instructions. He pauses for just a moment, though, gazing out at the glorious crimson, topaz, golden light spilling out across the horizon. It sparks a fierce joy in him, reminding him that he, at last, has everything he ever wanted, that at last he is part of something good and powerful and destined. It's going to be a wonderful day. Each season, the civil service prepares a summary of the Empire's relationship with foreign nations, based on communications received from their ambassador, along with any useful intelligence gathered from other sources. While the Senate and the other houses of imperial power may respond to these offers, it is important to note that it is the appropriate ambassador the foreign power will expect to hear from. Their communication with the foreign power is the primary element that will determine the tenor of any response. Imperial relations with the citadels of Axos are significantly improved over where they were a year ago, in part due to the involvement of imperial priests in the reclamation of the ruins of Solica. The Axu remain proud and touchy about their sovereignty and position in the world, however, creating challenges for the imperial ambassador. They are members of the Liberty Pact, but they know they are only there thanks to the Empire, on the sufferance of the Commonwealth and the Sumar. In recent months, the small nation to the south of the Malum is clearly undergoing a level of internal upheaval, thanks to the ambitions of Grand Illark Kytha. More recently, they were rocked by scandal leading to the retirement of the former ambassador Illark Maxatius, the formation of a new Grand Council to guide the nation, and the establishment of a unified convocation that seeks to do the same for Axos's disparate religious sects. He is succeeded in the position by the Flame of Rayquaza of the Blast Coast. In Axos, Maxatius has been replaced by the Illark Karioskopos, a scion of the Skopos family of the Chambers of Asik. At the instruction of the Grand Illarks, however, he has renounced his ties to the citadel of his birth for as long as he holds the post. Instead, he is known as Ilach Skopos of Solica, signifying his neutrality when it comes to the politics of the citadels. The new ambassador reports directly to the Grand Council and represents their will, and through them, the will of their people. One of the first matters Ilach Skopos has arranged is the dispatch of a diplomacy envoy to Anvil to arrive during the autumn equinox and renew relations between the Empire and the citadels of Axos. The delegation expects to be formally received by the new ambassador in the Imperial Senate. The meeting is scheduled for late morning on Saturday. Cario admits that mostly the delegation is intended to be a little pageantry, to mollify some of those looking for an excuse for the citadels to be annoyed with the Empire, a chance for diplomats from both nations to make some speeches and little else. Once it's concluded, however, it is hoped that there will be a chance to discuss a couple of more serious issues, specifically related to the war in the Sarengrave, and to the Liberty Pact. On the matter of the war with the Druge, it seems that the summer visit from representatives of Grand Ilach Dancia Terrakos of Ipatavo went well. They spoke with Gabriel Barossa, among others, and remain committed to taking action against the Tower of the Skink. It is hoped that there will be someone at the Senate who will be able to speak on behalf of the Imperial Military Council on this joint strategy and any political elements that may need smoothing out. In their missive, the Imperial Ambassador mentioned that the Empire was considering calling a meeting of the Liberty Pact, either in the coming winter or in the spring next year. This news delights Ilach Skopos, because it shows that the ambassadors of the two nations are thinking along similar lines. As it happens, Axos is calling a meeting of the Liberty Pact at the winter solstice that they will host, as is their right. They are aware that the seas are dangerous, and so have secured the boon of the Caucus Forum from the Midnight Owl. The Eternal has assured Ilach Skopos' office that there will be no problem bringing their representatives together from all four nations that are signatory to the pact in the secure Chamber of Night. The goal of the Axis delegate is to repeal the 384YE amendment that demands all signatories apply a trade embargo to the principalities of Jarm. They argue that the second principle, that signatory nations will place economic or trade sanctions of their own choosing on nations defined as slaving nations, is more than sufficient. The pact, Ilach Skopos, is about ending slavery, not about allowing the signatory nations to force their own politics on the other members. The Commonwealth has overstepped and attempted to turn the pact into a political weapon that distorts its original purpose. Ilach Skopos anticipates that the Empire will let his office know if there are any motions the Imperial delegate wishes to place before the pact for discussion at this meeting, and that the Sumar Republic and Commonwealth will do the same. One of Skopos' experts on the Liberty Pact will be traveling to Anvil along with the formal delegation, and hopes there will be a chance to speak to the voice of liberty, Jarek Silktongue, on the upcoming meeting. They apologize for preempting the Empire's meeting, but if there is business that is not resolved during the winter solstice, there will be ample opportunity for the Imperial delegate to call a further meeting. Ilach Skopos advises making use of the Caucus Forum, or a similar eternal boon, simply because it makes it much harder for members of other nations to find reasons they cannot attend. As mentioned last season, in the wake of the recent cleansing of Solica, Theodosia of Ipatavo has established a permanent presence in the ruins of the Citadel. At this small temple, several of the Axu sects that help reclaim the haunted ruins have established a unified convocation, the Annius Synclisis in the old language of the Nikitis Axu. It is modelled somewhat on the General Assembly of the Imperial Synod, but so far only a small number of Axo sects expressed any interest in becoming a part of it. How much influence the convocation will be able to wield is not clear. The Axo share a single religion, but few priests possess any actual political power. It seems that over recent months, the convocation has focused on spreading a message of unity and of the importance of the Axo faith as a way for citizens of the citadels to understand their place in the world. Fundamentally conservative, it has so far proved acceptable to those who wield real power, the Grand Ilachs. Indeed, Grand Ilach Kaither of Kaban has spoken openly in support of the convocation, and of the importance of cleaving to the values that built the citadels. Anyone who has made any study of Axu religion knows that it fundamentally stands in opposition to the way. Indeed, Axu scholars have gone so far as to repudiate the doctrines of the faith in detail in their writing. Not only does the religion preach the importance of resisting the Creator, the curse of death, and the torments of the labyrinth, it preaches that any spiritual force may prove to be a useful weapon in that battle. Axo-sects combine the true virtues more freely with much more malign spirits in their pursuit of that war. Unifying the disparate sects will be an uphill struggle, but if it succeeds, it is unlikely to be good for anyone with ambition to spread the way into Axos. During the summer solstice, 2 statements were upheld in the Ambition and Vigilance assemblies, calling for Imperial priests to travel to guide the lost sheep of Axu to a virtuous path, and to support the convocation such that we may use its infancy to advance Imperial interests in Axos. Neither statement achieved a greater majority, however. That may be for the best. The Axo are notoriously prickly about condescension, and painting their priests as lost sheep or infants is almost guaranteed to annoy them a great deal. The Grand Convocation has not asked for any assistance, and if it were to be offered, it would need to be done carefully, or risk upsetting a situation that is, at least for the moment, relatively stable. Should any Virtue Assembly wish to offer aid, however, the first step would be to achieve a greater majority. The civil service cautioned that sending Imperial priests to Axos on this matter will be challenging. Recent trips to Solica showed that the Axu are no less committed to their beliefs than the Empire is. It is unlikely that any group of Imperial priests are going to undermine Axu's certainty that the Creator is the enemy and that the Labyrinth is a trap. In turn, there is little risk of the Axu convincing devout priests of the Way that their beliefs are false and that they should decry the Creator. What is likely to happen, however, is that Axo sects will continue to share their understanding of these so-called false virtues with anyone who comes to Axos, and there is a real danger of those tempted to explore these malign spiritual presences would take this opportunity to visit the Eastern nation and embrace those dangerous spirits. One of the statements urging Imperial priests to visit Axos and help mold the United Convocation came from the former ambassador Fintan Nighthaven. During the summer solstice, Fintan was variously inquisited by the Inquisitor of Wisdom, Kalina Yatvigovna Piantsunkovna Proknost, and then both revoked and condemned by the Assembly of Nine. This has caused a great deal of discussion among priests in various parts of the Empire. Some have even pointed out that it is interesting that the condemnation was raised by the Cardinal of Wisdom, Silas of the Cenotaph, who is himself quite a controversial figure. Oblivious to all of this, and apparently unaware that it might have ramifications, the initial response to hearing that Fintan was no longer ambassador to Axos was one of surprise and sadness. Fintan, wrote Ilach Skopos, was an experienced diplomat who he personally had hoped to correspond with. Dealing with someone of Fintan's pedigree would have surely served as a steadying guide to his first faltering steps along the road of diplomacy. And while Ilach Skopos welcomes the new ambassador, it is with a little sorrow that he never had a chance to match wits with the famous Fintan Nighthaven, and so on. It is followed a few days later by a formal recognition from the United Convocation that Fintan Nighthaven is an enemy of the Creator. This is apparently meant as an honorific, and within traditional Axu sects, it is not dissimilar to being recognized as an exemplar, or perhaps more likely the newly created status of exalted. Someone who, through spiritual or philosophical means, has opposed the Creator's wicked plans and encouraged other mortals to resist the curse of death and the torments of the Labyrinth. It is clearly meant to be a good thing, but unfortunately may end up being another nail in the coffin of the former ambassador. The crimes Fintan stands condemned for, abuse of powers and blasphemy, are very serious indeed. The magistrates will try Fintan for these crimes at the autumn equinox, under the new guidance as to how to proceed, and it is not clear if the ambassador will be able to refute them. From a legal point of view, there are various possible pathways forward. It is vanishingly unlikely that the magistrates will not find the actions Fintan is accused of as broadly compatible with the definitions of the religious crimes of which he has been accused. It is certainly not overwhelmingly clear that the actions in question are not within the right scope. It may, of course, be the case that the accusations are simply false. If this is the case, and the magistrates judge this to be so at trial, then Fintan would have a clear defense in law, which would imply that almost every member of the Assembly of Nine has opened themselves to prosecution for perverting the course of justice. If Fintan pleads guilty, the right of clemency is open to him, if a member of the Synod wishes to offer it. If this plea fails, it seems likely, given the scale and severity of the accusation, that his execution will surely follow. However, another path exists. Per the recent guidance, there is but one body within the Synod that can countermand another assembly when it deigns to condemn, but it may so countermand even the Assembly of the Nine. This is, of course, the General Assembly. A judgment of vindication stating clearly that the General Assembly considers Fintan's actions to have constituted neither abuse of powers nor blasphemy would essentially terminate the current legal proceedings. Such a statement would not even require a greater majority to pass, unless the Emperor intervened in their role of custodian of virtue. Even then, a greater majority would save Fintan. It would also set the General Assembly directly at odds, not only with the Assembly of Nine, but also with their strong recent stance against meddling with false virtues. But the Synod has changed its mind before. Trade with Axos appears to remain strong. With the end of the Asavian bounty on ships trading with Imperial ports, there are more black-sailed ships arriving at Crown's Quay in Necropolis. Thanks to Imperial ships still committed to escorting ships to and from Imperial ports, trade is beginning to return to normal levels. Healthy trade is the lifeblood of nations, as the Sarkophans say, and the Pax Sarkophan appears to be paying off already. Cantor is no longer providing crystal mana. Instead, it will provide a visiting captain with 2 doses of something the Axo call Tomb Dust, a consumable that allows the user to expend their personal reserves of strength to power their magic. There are several varieties of Tomb Dust depending where it's gathered, but they all apparently bear a touch of necromantia about them. The merchants of the city have also been given leave by the Grand Council to make some of their rarer goods available to visiting Imperial captains. A fleet that has been upgraded or enchanted may be able to acquire one of the Masks of the Citadel, magical foci that empower certain ritual magics favored by the descendants of the Sorcerer Kings. In response to a peacemaking gesture from the halls of Makop, the Imperial Conclave agreed to send a delegation of the Shattered Lantern to Axos to work with magicians there on a codification. They chose a ritual named Oath of the Bleak Garden, an enchantment that adds weight to spoken oaths in Gazer. The formulation of the ritual, believed to have been based on work performed by the Urizen Spiridonakis of the Lighthouse that was completed swiftly and efficiently, and a copy of the ritual text should now be in possession of Grandmaster Tibban Weaver, who raised the declaration. Shortly after the work was completed, not long before the autumn equinox, a concerned message reached the office of the Imperial Ambassador from Ilak Skopos. Grand Ilak Kilaparia of Makop is a little concerned to have received warning from a reputable source that Imperial citizens, members of the delegation from the Shattered Lantern, may have planned to engage in espionage and theft while visiting Makop as guests of their faculty there. Grand Ilak Kilaparia of Makop is particularly distressed by this, and as such the Axo Ambassador requests reassurances from the Ambassador, and, ideally, the Imperial Senate or the Imperial Conclave, that no such act has taken place, and no similar act will be considered in the future. It may simply be that the source of the warning was engaged in malicious mischief, or seeking to sabotage relationships with the Grand Council, but there is enough concern that Ilak Skopos feels driven to request such reassurances. Regardless, it does not appear that Grand Ilak of Makop is keen for further delegations from the Empire. While individual students may attend, it is unlikely a similar opportunity for a conclave order to work on the codification of a ritual will be forthcoming anytime soon. Any player whose character is a part of the Shattered Lantern Order may have accompanied the delegation heading to Makop last season to attend the university there and help codify the winter ritual. They will have found the city a little standoffish, especially members of the Grand Ilak's immediate circle and the higher-ranking members of the university faculty, but been welcomed with a degree of enthusiasm by the students in particular. In addition to the work of codification, alongside Axo experts in winter magic, there were opportunities for several feasts, a chance to see the site of the Cloister Citadel, and to audit a few classes on any number of subjects, both mundane or more exotic, especially those relating to funerary practices, which are treated as both a science, an art, and a magical discipline by the Axo. There may have been opportunities for minor espionage, but nothing with game implications. If there was a theft of ritual knowledge, only Grandmaster Tibban will know the details, and who took part in that operation. That is, the Grandmaster is free to invite other players to have been a part of such a scheme, but it's not appropriate for a player to decide they were involved. Ambassador Cassandra put forward a proposition that Axis might be interested in purchasing a right to study at the Zemris Naval Academy in Calvos. After extensive discussion, Ilak Skopos regretfully declines the offer on behalf of the Grand Council. It seems that the Axu do not see the value in naval forces. Their expertise lies very much in the realm of fortification, and in those places where they might consider expansion, a navy will be of little use. On the other hand, there is some interest in the Five Cities Military Academy and the Barossa School of Imperial Strategy in Tasato. According to Ilak Skopos, there are a number of mid-rank officers in the military forces of the Northern Citadels, Ipatavo, Kaban, and Isik, who have expressed a desire to spend time studying alongside the Empire's elite captains. There are places to study the science and art of war in Exos, of course, especially in Ipatavo, but Skopos does not shy away from praising the Empire's foremost military academy. Axis has enjoyed a long period of relative peace, after all, Its strong traditions of defensive warfare mean that experience of aggressive campaigns is limited to the gaming tables and discussions with dead generals whose knowledge of the modern world and developments in military strategy is in places woefully inadequate. If Axos is truly to take its place in the world as a true power, it will need to modernize and expand its martial forces, and the Ground Council cautiously approve of the idea of sending some of their warriors to study at the Barossa School. Obviously, this is a very different proposition to the current situation, where the Bursar of the House of Spirits oversees a low-key exchange program mostly focused on providing opportunities to study the arts and humanities. It will place Axos citizens in a position to study Imperial military history and practices like never before, and there is some significant potential for espionage if the Axo were so inclined. Fortunately, the Empire has no history of direct military conflict with Axos since their ill-starred invasion in the reign of Emperor Nicobar. On the other hand, there is little doubt among the civil service that the Axo would benefit more from studying the Imperial war machine and the workings of the Imperial Military Council in particular than the Empire might gain from the arrangement. At the very least, they would end up almost as well informed about the Empire's victories, losses, and current strategies as any other dedicated captain attending the Academy. That is, they would gain at least as much information as someone reading a summary of the Winds of War each season. That alone could prove problematic, in theory, depending what the Empire is doing at the time. Skopos proposes that the students wishing to attend the Academy simply pay for the privilege. He estimates that there is sufficient interest in the opportunity to provide 5 thrones each season to the Academy. Such funds would end up in the Imperial Treasury unless the Imperial Senate made other arrangements. Either way, the arrangements would need a Senate motion to confirm arrangements should they wish to accept the request. Bathika de Dasato Regario, an Apulian Orc veteran and experienced Grendel commander before joining the League, points out that if the Empire is prepared to take the risk, there may be an opportunity for additional profit in it. The Axo may not be able to match the Empire in grand strategy, but they are not without their areas of expertise. Their grand citadels, city-sized fortifications, are proof that the people of Axos are skilled engineers, almost as good as those from Holberg, and that they have a lot of experience with defensive building. Any who has visited the walls of Cargo know they have some techniques that are not common with the Empire, and their cities have properties very reminiscent of the new Citadel innovation. They're also known to be reasonably effective at deploying battle mages. Their Texatai light skirmishers are apparently well practiced at small unit tactics, employing both sword and rod. While their fighting style is similar to that of the Urizen Sentinel, there are enough differences to mean that they might have some actual insight into such strategies. If the Senate does go ahead with allowing Axo soldiers to study at the 5 cities military academy, Bathika proposes that the ambassador, or the Senate motion used to issue the invitation, casually invite some siege commanders, or, if they prefer, some Toxatai captains, to come along. Done casually, it will not alert the Axo to the idea that they might have something useful to offer. One reason Bathika suggests only asking for one or the other. Asking both will make it a little too obvious what the Empire seeks to gain from the arrangement. Last season, Mistress Isaphenia of Makop, a well-respected professor in the Faculty of Natural Philosophy who has been living in the Empire for nearly 4 years now, expressed interest in the Great Library of Hassanin. Mistress Isaphenia oversees a small group of students from Axos studying in the Empire, and assists Imperial youths who might wish to study in Makop. She also helps operate the House of Spirits in Cassania, alongside Bursar Rinar of the Shattered Tower. Several students would like the opportunity to study at the Great Library, but would need permission to do so. The Axos professor mentions that no permission has, so far, been forthcoming. She's aware that there has been some uncertainty as to who might be responsible for the Great Library, but again wonders if either the Bursar or the Singer of Silence, Shan Eternal, would be interested. If so, they can send a winged messenger to Skopos and confirm the invitation. In many ways, Mistress Isaphenia would rather they politely decline than simply remain silent, but she understands that there are many drains at the time of a busy academic. Obviously, the civil service have advised a degree of caution following the request, given that it appears to offer no particular benefit to the Empire beyond perhaps some diplomatic favour from Makop, and risks the Axo finding out more about the Valorn that is good for them.